And welcome back to Attorneys on Call. We're so happy that you've joined us for this show today. And at any time, you can call the 800 number on your screen or go to whitleylawfirm.com. And also, we have another website for you to go to because we are talking about toxic water at Camp Lejeune here in Jacksonville, North Carolina. That is LejeuneRelief.com. Ben Whitley and Stacy Miller from the Miller Law Group is here, who's joined forces with Ben and the Whitley Law Firm, representing people that may have been affected by this. Ben, this was, let's show the graphic right away. Let's show the graphic of when this happened. And if you look at the dates, 1953 to 1987, why is that relevant now?
Well, that was the period of time that essentially what it was a dry cleaner that was near that base water well that was leaking extremely harmful chemicals.
Toxic chemicals.
Toxic chemicals. I will get some scientists on here to say those names, but they're also on the website as well. But those toxic chemicals were in that water from that period of time. And several CDC studies that were done instigated by an unusual amount of birth defects.
Wow.
That came out of Camp Lejeune. There's really horrible stories out there. There was even a graveyard that was full of infants that were during that period of time. That's what was the instigator to look into that, and so that was what was determined as the time frame that folks that were exposed. And there's been attempts to get relief for these folks for a long time, and this new law that opens up the statute of limitations, which means the period of time you can file a claim, that's a big deal because the last time that folks tried to do this, that's the reason they lost.
So let's talk about who actually qualifies here.
Sure.
We could talk about if you were a Marine stationed at Camp Lejeune at the time, maybe you had a spouse that was there as well or a dependent, right?
Sure, dependents, children in utero at the time. And even if you were living there during that prescribed time between 1953 and 1987 and you've passed away, you still have, your descendants would still have a claim.
They could still make a claim.
That's right.
Okay, and obviously what you want to do is you want to call the number on your screen and go to whitleylawfirm.com to get more information, or go to LejeuneRelief.com. That's interesting. And so you might have been, let's say you were a contractor working, you're a civilian, but you're working on base. You could have been exposed too.
Absolutely you could have, and probably were.
And your offspring could be exposed as well.
Right, and some of the families, when we've been meeting with families, a lot of times several members of the families will retain us because they may have had lost an uncle that they remember, they're going through, and they're thinking even about some of those issues that they themselves were born with, that they've carried for this whole time. And it's worth looking into. They are going to reopen this for only 2 years.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So let's talk about, let's look at another graphic that really talks about diseases, some of the diseases that people are exposed to. Number one, cancer.
Cancer is a big one. Liver cancer, prostate cancer, kidney cancer, breast cancer, those are big ones.
And then there's also, could be a fertility problem, Parkinson's disease, autoimmune diseases, neurobehavioral effects. Boy, there's just a long list of things that could be affected. So immediately I look at this and I say 1987. You know, a lot of people my age had children born during that time, during the 80s. So they could be in really bad shape right now.
They can. And it affected like as I mentioned, it affected entire families. And the science has already been out there that has attached the chemicals that were known to have been in those drinking wells to various illnesses that we've listed on these graphics, and that would be as a cause from that. And a lot of times in cases that Stacy and I work on, we always have to really, it's a trouble sometimes proving that connection between a disease and what happened. In the Camp Lejeune cases, the law has been written to help claimants make that connection easier, because if they have a listed disease, the science and the studies have already been there. We think, it's still early. Stacy and I are in the trenches in this thing.
Yeah, right.
And things change, but we think as of right now that the being able to make those links, that the law has allowed that to be an easier process. So it's important for folks to find something with that diagnosis in it. Our firm should be able to retrieve through some really good services old military records.
Documentation.
Right.
Documentation. But sometimes, because the length of time that we're talking about, they may be hard to find. So if there are any medical records or past diagnoses or death certificates and things like that, we're encouraging folks to get their documents together.
And Stacy, there's a finite time here with the new law that people can file a claim, correct?
That's right. They're going to have 2 years to file your claim. So after 2 years, you're going to be barred. It's like a new statute of limitations after 2 years.
So let's say a person watching this says, you know what, I was either based at Camp Lejeune during that time or a loved one was. What do they do first? What should they do?
Well, first they need to contact a lawyer, somebody experienced, right? And we can shepherd them through the process.
Okay. So initially, Ben, it's a phone call to your firm or to Stacy's firm to say, hey guys, what do I need to do?
Right. We've got our folks are trained on the law. They're trained on these specific illnesses. So it is a free call, right? So you can call for free.
100%.
And we will tell you if you qualify. Our folks are on the phone. They've got all of the information.
Right.
You can talk about your situation.
Right.
And if you qualify, it doesn't cost anything for us to start the claim. These are all contingency fee cases, meaning that Stacy and I are not going to get any fees unless we either win the case through a settlement or a trial.
Stacy, I understand there's a lot of misinformation out there going on, a lot of stuff going back and forth, and a lot of questions. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I'm hearing all sorts of things. Does this disease, is it covered by this disease? What burden of proof do you have to have? Are you going to have to call your doctors? How expensive is it going to be? The unique thing about this law is that they've narrowed the gate, okay? So presumptively, if you have certain conditions, they were caused by this water contamination. So the expense of proving these things, which can traditionally be very expensive.
I bet.
But this situation is different.
So it is. So let's say, so the law has said, we presume that you were adversely affected by this.
Right. If you have prostate cancer and you were at Camp Lejeune between 1955 and 1987 for 30 days, presumptively it was caused by this toxicity in the water.
Okay. So that's the key, right, Ben? You have to have been there for 30 consecutive days, or
30 consecutive days, yes.
Okay.
And you had mentioned, one of the questions that it kind of comes up a lot, and I think it's important to talk about, is that I mentioned earlier that there was some systems that were put into place to try to give folks some relief, and there was a VA benefit that was established for veterans only.
Okay.
So to receive some disability payments and medical care as a
Okay.
result of the toxic water.
Okay.
And in those types of situations, veterans are able to go online, and this has been around for a while, this has been out.
Okay.
They can go online and they can file a claim. They do not need an attorney. You shouldn't pay an attorney to do that. This law is different. This is an actual federal lawsuit that they've allowed you to bring for damages for pain and suffering, for medical expenses, for economic loss, much more available recoveries than just what a disability payment would be under the VA. Some people said, well, what if I've got that VA payment for the Camp Lejeune?
Yeah, right.
And can I do the lawsuit? The answer is yes, you can. These are two separate claims.
Two separate claims.
Now, what will happen is they'll get a credit because the government doesn't think you should have two bites at the apple.
Okay.
And so if there's an offset for the medical care, we'll figure that out. That's part of our job to deal with that. But the thing that folks need to know is it's different than what they can do online with the VA. It's a separate lawsuit.
And Stacy, these are claims that will be handled in federal court, correct?
Yes, the laws prescribe them to be handled in the Eastern District of North Carolina in federal court. Our federal system in North Carolina is broken up into 3 districts, Western, Middle, and Eastern.
Okay.
These are going to be in the Eastern districts, right where we grew up, where we practice, have been here for 28, 30-some years practicing law.
Remind our viewers why it is so important to hire an attorney like you or Ben that has a lot of experience litigating in federal court.
Well, we know the landscape. I mean, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be as effective lawyer in the Southern District of California.
Okay.
Right?
I get it.
Grew up right here. It's where our relationships are. I know the proclivities of the juries, know the judges. We're at home.
You know how people think here is what you're saying, right?
Exactly. Thank you.
Ben's always talked about this in the past shows we've done, how, North Carolina folks They're very hardworking people.
Yeah,
they're
don't want
down to
lawsuits.
earth.
They don't like suing people.
They don't.
No.
But they also want to file a claim when it's important and needed and necessary. And in these cases, for sure it is.
That's right.
Look,
And-
these folks who have dedicated their lives to our country,
Absolutely.
and they deserve to be represented and represented well.
That's a
Right.
great point.
Right.
You know, we have a very high population of veterans and military based. I think second only to California, if I'm
Right.
not mistaken.
Well, yeah, and I'm really glad you said that, because that's why I found you. You know,
Yeah.
I had seen and heard about so many out-of-state law firms
Yeah.
coming in, and our people don't deserve that. And like I told you earlier, some of them are not even lawyers.
Well, and they're paid Hollywood actors doing the commercials, correct?
Right.
You're stuck with me. You don't.
What you see is what you get, and we're going to be your lawyers.
Once again, I'm going to show that first graphic that we talked about, because I want to remind folks that the initial case, the exposure dates, 1953 to 1987, if you were exposed to the toxic water at Camp Lejeune for 30 days or more. And we have a website set up answering a lot of these questions, LejeuneRelief.com. There's also the 800 number that you can call at any time, or go to WhitleyLawFirm.com. But Ben, tell us more about the LejeuneRelief.com website and why people should go there first, maybe.
Sure. Well, it's just just another free resource. We're
Okay.
trying to cut the noise out and give
Sure.
people the facts, keep it simple, and this is what you need to know. So that's what I've tried to do with this website. But it's also a great portal. Some people don't like talking on the phone. So
Yeah, right.
you
They
got to
be shy or something.
and I get
Right.
it. That's okay. Sometimes I don't. You got a form, and you can fill out all of your contact information. You can drop down the illness, and we'll have a confidential conversation when you're ready. So there's ways to get in touch with us.
And it's always, the initial conversation is always free.
That's right.
And we're going to be back with more Attorneys on Call in just a moment.